Hello, I'm Elaine Clark, Chief Executive of the Rail Forum, and welcome to the Rail Forum Patron podcast series, where our patron members take to the airwaves to explore key themes shaping the future of rail. Today, I'd like to introduce our guest, Tim Bentley of Wabtec. Tim is the Group Managing Director and Regional Vice President. We're going to talk about Wabtec's expansion and investment in the UK, and that's investment into their technical capabilities, into their people and skills, and how that's all going to strengthen the UK supply chain's capabilities and resilience. So, Tim, tell us a little bit about your vision. You've announced major investment in your UK operations. What's driving that commitment, and how does that reflect your long-term strategy?
Delighted to be here, Elaine. It's great to spend a bit of time talking about the industry and then Wabtec's place within that. So let's start with Wabtec. So Wabtec is one of the world's great rail technology companies, right? In the Alstom, Siemens, Wabtec, Hitachi kind of vein. And they and Wabtec and we have had a long-term commitment and investment in the UK for a number of years in sites across Doncaster and Barton and Birkenhead, amongst other places. And we have had to adapt and to change those things depending on the various changes that the industry is going through. And we've adapted that over time. We made a decision based on our view of the vehicle market and the renovations market and where that was sitting. And we took a decision that we wanted to pull out of that. But we wanted to pull out of that with a view of strongly focusing on subsystem asset management, which is all the subsystems of trains, doors, braking systems, engines, wheels, bogies, focusing on the subsystems, which is what the wider Wabtec does on a global basis, and pulling out of doing the vehicles. And when we pull out of doing the vehicles, that means a place like Doncaster becomes very difficult to make sense of financially. So the consequence of that was to have to come out of Doncaster. But that meant that we then had to make a decision on where we would relocate and reinvest, because we had an ambition and vision to build a rail technology centre. That would be a hub for rail technologies, both from an OEM perspective, but mainly from a servicing perspective, with a strong engineering content, with a strong digital content as well, to make the most of how do we get data and how do we make use of data on a modern railway. And so we've set up a TPOC centre, which is our view of a control centre that does that, and then with a capability of assets, and we decided that we put that in Barton, and that's really the £30 million investment that we are making.
Just remind me, what does TPOC stand for?
Train Performance and Optimisation Control Centre.
Perfect. I've been in the TPOC, and it is actually a fascinating place to visit, because the data that you've got, how you're aggregating that data and bringing everything together, the bit that I've seen really does visually display how assets are performing.
Although we've had this kind of technologies and these kind of technologies for a number of years, I still think that the industry is struggling to actually make sense of that and actually make appropriate use of that to improve performance or reduce the life cycle costs. So we've took a lot of the learning that's been going on in the United States. We're an American company, and they've been doing a lot of work over many years with locomotives. And the point being that the data and the visualization of that is one thing, but the real key to that is how do we get a process and a governance and a bunch of engineers to understand that they're looking at that on a minute-by-minute daily basis, and that they're making decisions that then can take action in the field, so we can see actually what's going on with the performance of the kit in real time on the railway, and then take appropriate actions with our customers to be able to make that better.
And everything we hear, or not everything, but lots of things that we hear from whether it's DFT or government or whoever, Network Rail World, that performance, that improving how we manage our assets is so critical to help efficiencies, help reduce costs, etc. And so it is absolutely about getting the real quality information out of that data that you guys are doing.
And the point being, how does the railway as a whole improve performance and reduce life cycle cost? Key challenge, easy words to say. How do we do that? Because to do that, you need collaboration, you need working together, you need a set of data that's the data that people are using. So everyone can look at and focus on that rather than chucking stones or throwing things at each other. We can understand what the performance of that looks like on the railway. We can then get in real time, then proper engineers sitting with proper engineers and across various parts of the industry to bring that together to make suggestions of actions and improvements. And that's how we see, by focusing on the subsystem asset management of that, we can add some real value into that.
So you mentioned collaboration, and I know from our conversations in the past that UK supply chain and that UK domestic market and the supply chain resilience is so important to you. I know you feel passionately about it. So do you want to talk a little bit about that in terms of what you're doing and how that works with the wider supply chain?
I think the rail industry is in a challenging situation, right? We are not delivering what we need to for our passengers, and we're not delivering what we need to as a cost base to the government. And I think it's up to the industry now to get together, understand how do we work together better to be able to improve that situation, step change significantly for a longer time. The opportunity of that comes from GBR, but GBR is not a golden bullet for anything. It's an opportunity for us to work better together. It's an opportunity for us to understand what an operating company does and what a network rail does, and then what someone sat in the supply chain can do. I think over time, there's not been a great understanding between the operational side of the railway, in particular train operating companies, and what a rolling stock integrator or a rolling stock technology supplier, how they can work better together. And it's a bit of a UK disaster area, I have to say. Over time, the likes of Bombardier, Alstom's, a lot of those have been treated very harshly in a UK market environment. That has not been collaborative for whatever reason, a number of reasons, not here to say the reasons, but I think the opportunity now for us to actually get together and say, let's try and understand how globally invested, capital invested organisations can work better together to understand what the rules of engagement are in a UK marketplace, how we can then offer, because we've got our obligations within that is to train the future of engineering in the UK. It's the same with the Alstom Siemens are trying to do the same thing. So deeply corporate, capital invested organisations that are here for the long term, I think should be able to have a conversation about how we use them technologies, how do we get the operating world to understand that better, how do we get the DFTO to understand that better, and how do we collaborate better together? Because in the end, it's up to all of us to get together and say, how are we going to improve the performance to the passenger and get people on trains? How are we going to reduce the cost of all that so we can then have a public transport system that we can all be passionately caring about, which is what I've spent most of my life trying to do.
From a Wabtec perspective, do you see it working better in other countries?
We see a global picture, and I sit on global conversations of different regions of the world. I don't think there's any panacea of railway operation that looks different. Germany's going through its own problems right now, and they're maybe trying to change in a different direction, the direction we went through a few years ago. And in the end, it's not about structures necessarily, and it's about how groups of people and organisations can actually work together to a common aim. If you look back and you say that, post-privatisation, we're not allowed to talk about that anymore, but did double passenger numbers, did deliver a lot to improve public transport, then it's fallen away. Now we need to do something else. So we've all got to get behind that something else. I don't think there's a magic bullet that comes from overseas in that, but I do think that there is a UK way of doing that, and I think that if we all understand better what we're trying to achieve and our place in it, makes for an easier conversation. It's never an easy conversation in a corporate where you don't understand your own marketplace and what the investments are going to be, and the kind of medium long-term view of train orders or maintenance orders or refurbishments. That's much easier conversations and much easier for organisations to make investment decisions on when you can see that as a joined up industry, things going on. Not that that's always going to play out and be the truth, but a good sense of direction, I think, is essential for us to be able to go back to our headquarters in Paris and in Pittsburgh and say, this is the direction of the UK. And I think that that's kind of starting to emerge. It's starting to become easier to do that. But you still have to have a lot of faith that the pace of that and the direction of that, is it assured? I don't know just yet.
Yeah, I think that stability is something that we all talk about a lot, that we need that stability in the policy and the strategy so that all companies of whatever size have got that confidence to invest, because you've all got choices as to where you invest for the future. You also made another really important point, I think, Tim, which is the structures of the industry aren't necessarily the be all and end all. It's the people that will make it work. If the people are willing to work together, have got that clarity of vision and where they're trying to get to, and that sense of purpose for our customers, it's the people.
You know, the jobs of various people, whether that be the government, Network Rail, they can set the playing field of how we can operate in those areas. Again, you know, the supply chain is a heavy capital investment that you make for the long term. Guys sat in train operating companies don't imagine that. They work on a different KPI and a different measure of success. When we had the likes of a private franchise train operating company with little capital investment, making decisions that can affect and cripple technology companies with large capital investment, that's the wrong balance. And that has cost the UK, I think, over time, a lot of the industry that was there. Other countries don't do that to their capital invested technology companies.
So that really neatly leads into what you're doing, I think, in Barton, near Barton. You're making significant investment in the site, and some people might be surprised at that because the market conditions that you've just described don't always make it easy to make those investment decisions. So can you tell us a little bit more about what you're planning for Barton, what you're doing at Barton, and what that expansion looks like?
So let's start with the top one. Why would we be able to convince a corporation like Wabtec to invest £30 million in the Midlands in the UK in a market that's challenging? And I think the answer to that is we make the case that the UK, one of the world's big economies, needs a world-class train system over time. It can't function properly, it can't grow the way it needs to grow, it can't be the things it needs to be unless we have a fully functioning rail system. And therefore, we are here for a long-term investment and can take a long-term view of that, which we are doing. Clearly, we're an American company, so we need long-term investment, but we need to make sure that we have sustainable, relatively short-term returns on that. And I think that we can do that in making Barton, whilst we have a long-standing factory in Barton where we have been doing for many years engine overhauls, and is a backbone of the diesel fleet in the UK, by the way. So we've improved the way we deliver those things, and we looked at Barton as how do we expand that footprint in Barton to create a rail technology centre? What do we need to do there? So we are building 3 or 4 new buildings of a substantial size, expansion of the industrial footprint in Barton. That enables us then to do what's traditionally been done there, which is the engines and the transmissions and the engine rafts and the cooler groups and that kind of stuff. And then we're going to move the things from Doncaster that we want to do on a long-term basis, which is wheelsets, which is bogies, which is air conditioning overhauls. We already do doors, and we do electronics, and we do obsolescence of electronics. Moore Schmidt is also on that site, and Moore Schmidt has got a long-standing view and do do all the relays and other equipment on trains across the world, by the way. So once we have managed all that, and the timetable of that is now, right? So we'll do pantographs and we'll do shoe gear, which is currently done in Doncaster. And in fact, we've started to do that. Last week was the first output of shoe gear overhauls that we've made from Barton. So it's happening now. We start pantographs from in a couple of weeks' time. So we recruit something like 150 people there over the next 12 months. The bogie shop and the wheel shop will be fully or 95% fully new equipment. So it will be the latest tech, the latest equipment. We've recently, Wabtec's a growing, it's a growing organisation, and it does that through acquisitions and a lot. And so it's bought a company which has a strong footprint in the UK called Evident, which does non-destructive testing of things. So we're bringing that into the mix as well and see how we automate non-destructive testing here. So we end up with a fully capable site that will be about 400 people. That will be a turnover of 150 plus million pounds a year. It gives you a site of a magnitude that then you can recruit apprentices. And so we've started that process, which has been a bit cyclic, but we've now got about 15 apprentices there, plus the ones in Birkenhead. So we start to then become a developer of talent, something we've been in the past, by the way, but now we can consolidate that in a proper place with a long-term vision and a long-term future. We'll have 50 engineers of various degrees, from electrical, mechanical to software engineers, to the teapot type engineers who can do all this stuff we're talking about. How do we reduce life cycle costs of subsystems, and how do we improve performance? And then how do we use all that to maybe give alternatives to how we procure train maintenance and how we do train maintenance in the UK?
And I guess, and tell me if I'm wrong, that by bringing those different activities together on the one site, it gives greater opportunity for ideas generation, sharing ideas.
Especially when you connect it together with the data. We've got a company called Axiom who develops bogies for freight wagons. And we do the data from what we call the kinetics system. And the kinetics then monitors the wheels and the wagons and the bogies of the wagons, and again through the teapot up the road. And then we can use that. If we do the wheel overhauls, we can do the bogie overhauls, we can connect that with data. Then we can have a real optimized system with our customers. That's on the freight side of the world. So I think it gives us opportunities to optimize those things. We're developing a self-powered bogie that's got batteries on that and that can regenerate itself and that powers itself. And we think that that can work under freight bogies. We think that can work under passenger trains, to work in conjunction with diesels as a relatively cheap option in dual fuel in those things. So there's a lot of exciting things, I think, that when you start aggregating those individual subsystems and having the right engineering thought and having the right mindset with what's happening in service, that hopefully we can provide and add some real value into certainly the UK supply chain, and then use that as a model to go and do that elsewhere as well.
And I know that you've recently invited quite a large number of people to visit the site to see what you were doing. How did that go?
It was great. We organised it over 3 days, and we got our OEM technology guys from across Europe and across the world. So we had door guys there, braking guys there, passenger information system people there, pantograph people, all sorts of different technologies from across the world. So we had a showcase of that and had people talking about that. And then the services bit, which we're mainly doing, we did a tour around Barton and to show how those things fitted together. It was well received. We had something like 200 customers over a couple of days. In fact, on the first day we did it for employees, and we brought apprentices in so they could see the breadth of capability. So I think we're developing a real good positive momentum, a good investment, and then that makes everybody give a clear sense of the vision and direction we want to take the organisation. And I think then we're getting a good reception now in the marketplace that says, okay, let's let's get behind something that could be really positive and really good over the next numbers of years.
And I think that's really important from a customer perspective. But the fact that you were able to bring your apprentices in and show them what you're planning, because sometimes words and visions don't necessarily always resonate with people, but when they can see the breadth of activity on that site, which is really important for them in terms of their future careers, they can see, oh, I'm working in this area now, but maybe in 6 months or 2 years I'll be working in that area over
I
there.
think it's really important. I mean, I was very fortunate. I worked for a company called GEC when started in the railway, and at that point there was a numbers of UK factories building braking systems, building and traction systems, and building all them things have shrunk. Organisations like ours can bring in apprentices and young engineers, and actually then connect them with the rest of the world where those technologies are being developed to understand and deeply understand those things. More than just taking parts off and sending them away somewhere. So I think they can learn from that. And so I think we can play a really major part in how do we upgrade and train the future generations of engineers and managers of the railway. And I think we take that as a serious responsibility, right? And I think that campus there, the Rail Technology Campus, will allow that critical mass of an organisation there. It will be the biggest exporter, I reckon, of rail technology in the UK as well.
I think you're probably right. So maybe just to explain a little bit more about what your thinking is on that, Tim, for the benefit of our listeners.
We sit and we talk about who's exporting from the UK, and there's a lot of discussion about we've got to get exports going to get the growth going to get whatever. And then I look round the UK industry, and because of this big contraction over the last 30 years in rail technology companies, the companies that are here are really here to serve the UK market, and are not doing that much exporting, certainly the big ones. But we are exporting a lot of technologies that go braking systems across the world. We are exporting overhauls of, by the way, but component parts. We make component parts and export them. We overhaul in Barton right now for Transdev, for Deutsche Bahn engines. We do that.
I think there's another opportunity that you've touched on with Barton, which is the opportunity to demonstrate to our UK stakeholders the opportunity for export. Because I sometimes talk to some of the key stakeholders in the industry and they say, oh, exporting rail is really difficult. We don't do it. Well, actually, you've got a really great site there that you can demonstrate we perhaps do more than people realise.
And I think as part of that partnership with the UK, we're happy to get involved in that. I mean, we're a member of your Rail Forum. I'm on the board of the RIA. And the industry does need to help each other a little bit. And it's not all about competition and we're gonna beat everybody at everything. It's not. I don't really see that as a point. Of course, we have to compete in various areas, but much better for us if we can find win-win situations and actually work better together.
So you can showcase to the UK clients and stakeholders what that export potential is, but you can also bring your potential overseas customers as well to a central location that's that real technology hub as you described. So I think there's a lot of real positive there. Change on the scale that you've described, which is all really positive, does also have challenges associated with it. So I know you wanted to talk about the impact on the people and the communities that you've worked with.
Thanks for the prompt on that, because it's a really important point. And we made the announcement of Doncaster to the people of Doncaster and our colleagues in Doncaster February this year. And since that time, we have delivered everything out of the place on time and to the right quality. And we have worked very closely with the people up there to make sure that they are looked after in the best possible way. It's been a great partnership, very humbling, in fact, very humbling. Discussing with people sat across the side of the table where their great-great-granddad had worked there and built Flying Scotsman and all the pride and heritage of one of the iconic sites in the country. And to come and have to deliver that had to close was very difficult and challenging. But the people there have dealt with it absolutely perfectly. And I want to just pay the respect to those teams of people who continue to do that, are committed to working with us to the end of 26, which is when we anticipate ceasing operations. And on top of that, are working with us to move the technologies from Doncaster to Barton, and are helping. That's on a site that over time has had significant industrial relations issues, and I think it's been so well handled, both sides of that discussion. The local council also has been brilliant in it. They're very fortunate to have a brilliant council up there, and they work with us on it. And have worked well. We're renting an office up there that will house about 30-40 people, so that they don't have to work in Barton every day. So we keep a foothold there, but we have to let the site go. And then we've got to have a positive integration. We're taking as many people from Doncaster as we can. We're encouraging them to travel down there and find ways of making that work. For some people it's easy, for some other people it's really hard. But we actively try and do that, and we'll make sure. And the other thing to note is that Doncaster has not had a lost time accident for 365 days, which is an enormous credit to how people care about each other up there. So the management, the workforce there have all banded together and all determined to go out and make sure that the legacy of the place is with their head held high.
And I think, to be fair, Tim, that is testament to the people that work there, but it's also testament to your local partners. You mentioned the council, and also your management team and your support teams that are there on the ground all the time, working with the people on the site. So I think, credit to all of you.
It's a good lesson, really. You got to leave well. If you're going to leave well. And I think that will stand us all in good stead. And there's a great team of people, right? So the likes of Siemens and Hitachi up there, who we talk to a lot, because Siemens are developing the Gould. They will benefit from a very highly skilled group of people who will go and work there.
So if I can change tack just a little bit and think a little bit more to the future, and specifically around innovation, and you touched on this a little bit when we started. I think Wabtec is well known for innovation in several of the various areas that you touched on when you were talking about the technologies that you're involved with. But how do you feel that your UK operations are now being positioned to meet the needs of our changing railway and our future railway?
We are a technology company, and I think that we are well respected for the innovations we bring. But we also have things like sanding systems and braking systems that react the same under low adhesion conditions and leaf fall as they do in dry conditions. And we've started to work with ScotRail on implementing such a system. And that does rely on this very close relationships and understanding between a train operator and a technology provider, that these are not necessarily off-the-shelf developments and technologies. You've got to develop them together. And I think we can help to be able to teach each other how we can come up with these innovations, but then implement them in a good way, in a better way.
So thinking then future and Great British Railways, GBR, when it finally happens, how do you see that opportunity, challenge for Wabtec, and what you've just described in terms of that working together?
Look, I think that we're a technology supplier, and so we will work within whatever framework the government and the railway says that's the framework and the playing field. We think we can add value by discussing various options of what some of them decisions will mean and how you optimise some of them decisions, because I do think it can be optimised for supply chains as well as how we operate the railway more effectively together. And I think a holistic approach to that might get us over some of the problems of the past. So we welcome GBR, right? I mean, if that's the way to go, if people in the industry say this is how it's going to be and how we're going to improve, then we'll rally behind that way of working. But I think we all have to understand, away from Wabtec now, that's not a golden bullet of operation, as we said earlier. Making all that work is going to take a lot of clever guys and people and technologies and processes and ways of working and governance of it all, and drive and intensity and energy. That's the bit that we've got to get going. That's the bit that concerns me most. I don't necessarily see. And that's the bit where you need a strong leadership team to get that intensity and get that energy and rally round a flag and get things done. And I think over the last few years, it's been a bit woolly around them areas, and you can't have woolliness if you want to drive change.
When we talk about GBR, we often talk about we really, really need that strong leadership to do exactly what you've said, which is help drive that change. But I think you also mentioned something that's really important, and that was about sit down and work together, work out what the challenges are, work out what the solutions are. And often, when we're talking to different companies across the supply chain, they're so frustrated that they're not able to have those direct conversations where you can sit down together and say, well, what's the problem you're really trying to solve? Oh, well, we could do this, we could do that. They're so often kept apart because of the procurement processes, because of different IT portals that don't facilitate that genuine collaborative conversation. And if GBO doesn't do anything else other than facilitate some of that, it will be an improvement, I think, on what we have. Because what you've said is absolutely, we need to sit down together and work this out together.
And I think that, maybe some of the understanding when supply chains talks to operations, talks to Network Rail, we understand procurement processes, but the procurement process is such a small part of, or should be such a small part of, but the definition, the off-cycle conversations that actually lead to what are the questions we should be asking the supply chain to deliver to? What maintenance arrangement should be on this particular bit of the railway? That needs a discussion with a wider audience than happens today, because otherwise it gets decided in an office somewhere that doesn't have necessarily an overall view where you can get a better view, a more holistic view about what is actually out there in the marketplace. In the transition, people are rolling over inefficient contracts that need to be better and can be better, and therefore would make a more efficient contracting arrangement for both sides, by the way. And if we just roll those things over, I understand rolling things over because that's enabled train operating companies to transfer, but we've quickly got to get a grip of that. Otherwise, the costs of this will get out of control before we actually then see the benefits of it.
So in closing, are there perhaps a couple key things that you would like our listeners to take away from our conversation today? Any sort of key messages?
My lad was going, my lad's 28, by the way, but he was going to Manchester. We live outside Manchester. And I said, why are you getting the train? And he said, are you mad? Why would I get the train? It's expensive. It's probably dirty. It's not going to turn up on time. I'm going to drive. And he's a young person, right? And for me, whatever we do with GBR, it has to address them points, right? We have to start operating a railway that delivers on time what needs to be delivered on time. Trains have got to turn up on time. We've got to have smiley people, customer service people. And I know that the railway is full of them people because I see them every day. But it's a frustration and hard for them when technology lets them down or the operating circumstances let them down. So we've got to fix that. And we've got to fix the cost issue of the railway because it's just too expensive to run a railway what we're running today. So we can, as we've discussed, provide solutions to some of that. But again, the whole industry's got to work together to really drive this because not everyone loves the railway like we love the railway, Elaine. Not everybody does that. And we have to make sure that we put the priorities of the customer first, the priorities of the passenger first, and start delivering what we need to deliver.
So I think you've summed that up really, really well in terms of the purpose of why we're all here, which is to serve our passengers, to serve our freight customers, and ensure that we're doing the absolute best for them that we can. I see people, you see people every day that passionately want to do that, and sometimes get frustrated that they're not allowed to because of the environment that we're currently in. But I think what you've also done over the last half an hour, Tim, is demonstrate really clearly your confidence to invest in the UK market, that we have got that long term to plan for. The expansion at Barton and that investment in skills, capability, and the UK is a fantastic story for you guys to build on behalf of the wider industry. And I think you're putting your money up front, really, in demonstrating your commitment to GBR for the future, and how hopefully we can work together to transform our railway so that your lad does want to go on the train and encourages his friends to go on the train.
Or work in the industry.
Oh, work in the industry, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really positive, hopeful message to sort of finish on. So Tim, can I thank you enormously for giving us your time today to share your thoughts and plans for the future, which I think are super exciting. And I visited the site recently, along with those several other people, and I'm looking forward to coming back over the next 12 months to see it develop, to see those buildings go up as you sort of described. And we stood on the car park and said, in 6 months' time there's going to be a building here that will be doing XYZ. So I'm looking forward to coming back and seeing that really take shape, and seeing the people there as well and the pride that they have on that site as it develops. So thank you for your time, and thank you to our listeners for listening in today, and do stay tuned for our next Patron podcast.